There is a comforting lie we tell ourselves about the cosmos. We look up at the night sky and see a pristine, silent expanse, a predictable clockwork of gravity and light. We imagine the vacuum of space as an empty theater waiting for us to take the stage. But emptiness is a human construct, a biological blind spot in how our senses process the infinite. The void is not empty. It has an architecture we are only just beginning to perceive. For over 50 years, humanity remained tethered to the shallow waters of our planetary shoreline. We built orbital stations, launched digital eyes into the dark, and congratulated ourselves for surviving the cosmic tide pools. Then came the Artemis II mission. 4 astronauts, sealed within the titanium hull of the Orion spacecraft, embarked on a trajectory designed to sling them around the far side of the moon. When the spacecraft slipped behind the immense mass of the moon, it entered the shadow zone. For 45 minutes, all communication with Earth was severed by thousands of miles of solid rock. No telemetry, no radio chatter, just 4 human beings suspended in the absolute sensory deprivation of the lunar night, staring into the raw, unfiltered abyss. The protocol was simple: record the external environment, monitor the systems, and coast back into the light. But the instruments aboard Orion did not record the quiet, predictable wash of background radiation. When the spacecraft re-emerged and its encrypted data streams flooded into the servers at Mission Control, the celebratory applause abruptly died. The telemetry registered a localized, highly structured distortion in the gravitational field, an anomaly that violently clashed with the foundational mathematics of general relativity. The deep space sensors had picked up a footprint that should not exist. It was not a telemetry glitch. It was a stark revelation of something fundamentally broken in our understanding of reality. We are about to dissect the exact telemetry NASA recovered from the dark side of the moon, exploring the cold mathematics and the sheer existential weight of a discovery that proves the universe is far more hostile than we ever calculated. If you seek the unfiltered truth in the dark, and if you have the courage to face the vast, indifferent mechanics of the cosmos, subscribe and join us on this journey. Because the raw data from that blackout does not just challenge our physics, it suggests that what we call the vacuum of space is merely a veil, and as the analysts stared at the unspooling numbers, they realized the veil was shifting. To understand the sheer magnitude of what the Orion flight computers recorded, you first have to understand why your brain is actively lying to you about the nature of reality. We are biological machines, evolved to survive on the thin, atmospheric skin of a rocky planet. Our neurology was shaped by the brutal immediate need to track the parabolic arc of a thrown spear, to predict the friction of the soil beneath our feet, to calculate the sudden drop of a falling stone. We are intuitively wired for a universe of flat lines, right angles, and constant unforgiving time. When we look up at the night sky, our primitive minds project this terrestrial intuition onto the cosmos. We see the universe as an immense, 3-dimensional box. We imagine a vast, unmoving grid of absolute nothingness, a silent, empty theater stage upon which the stars and planets move like actors hitting their designated marks. For centuries, this comforting illusion was the undisputed foundation of human science. Isaac Newton codified it for us. He handed humanity a clockwork universe, a beautifully deterministic machine where space was a rigid, unyielding framework, and time was a universal metronome ticking at exactly the same rate for everyone, everywhere. In the Newtonian mind, if you removed every galaxy, every star, and every atom from the universe, you would be left with a perfectly empty, perfectly dark, and infinitely stable void. It was a sterile, predictable emptiness. This idea built our modern world. It allowed us to engineer bridges, to chart the oceans, and eventually to calculate the orbital mechanics needed to hurl machines into the black. It felt right. It felt logical. It felt overwhelmingly safe. But the universe does not care about what feels safe to a primate. The universe operates on a scale of mathematics that treats human intuition as a rounding error. In the early 20th century, that rigid glass ceiling of human understanding was completely shattered. Albert Einstein realized that the theater stage was not empty, and it was certainly not rigid. Through the grueling, beautiful mathematics of general relativity, Space and time were violently fused together into a single dynamic, four-dimensional fabric. Space-time. Suddenly, the void was alive. It was no longer a passive background. It was a physical medium that could be stretched, warped, twisted, and torn by the presence of mass. Imagine a sprawling metropolis completely devoid of people in the dead of night. The streets, the avenues, the towering skyscrapers. They form a perfect grid. Now imagine that the sheer, incomprehensible weight of the buildings causes the very asphalt of the streets to sink, drawing the nearby lampposts inward, curving the avenues, distorting the fundamental grid itself. If you were to roll a car down that warped street without touching the steering wheel, its path would curve. It is not being pulled by a mysterious magnetic force emanating from the buildings. It is simply following the shortest possible path along a surface that is no longer flat. This is what gravity actually is. The Earth is not reaching out with an invisible hand to pull the moon. The Earth is creating a massive, deep indentation in the fabric of reality. And the moon is merely rolling along the curved rim of that invisible cosmic valley. The mathematics describing this are unforgivingly precise. Einstein's field equations describe this interaction using tensors, complex arrays of numbers that calculate exactly how the geometry of the universe bends to accommodate mass and energy. We know this is not just theoretical physics confined to blackboards. We prove it every single second of every day. The network of GPS satellites orbiting our planet must constantly adjust their internal atomic clocks because time literally moves faster for them in the weaker gravity of high orbit than it does for us on the surface. If we ignored the curving of space-time, if we relied on our Newtonian intuition, our entire global navigation network would collapse into chaotic static within minutes. We have mapped the local topography of our solar system with terrifying accuracy. We know exactly how space bends around the sun, how it ripples around the Earth, and how it pools in the silent craters of the moon. And yet, the curvature of gravity is only the macroscopic illusion. It is the smooth surface of the ocean. When you zoom in, when you strip away the planets and the stars and look at the microscopic foundation of that space-time fabric, the horror truly begins. Because our intuition fails us a second time, even more spectacularly. We naturally assume that if we remove all the mass, all the heat, and all the light from a volume of space, we achieve a true vacuum, absolute nothingness. But the cold equations of quantum mechanics dictate that a true vacuum is a mathematical impossibility. Nothingness is forbidden by the laws of physics. If you were to take a perfectly sealed titanium vault out into deep space, cool it down to absolute zero, shield it from all background radiation, and pump out every single subatomic particle, the inside of that vault would still not be empty. Werner Heisenberg's uncertainty principle demands that you cannot simultaneously know both the exact energy and the exact duration of a quantum system. On a microscopic scale, this means that energy can literally be borrowed from nothingness, provided it is paid back almost instantly. The result is a violent, unending storm of virtual particles. Electron-positron pairs spontaneously erupt into existence from the void, exist for a trillionth of a microsecond, and then annihilate each other in a silent flash of mathematical reconciliation. The vacuum of space is not a quiet, empty room. It is a rolling, boiling ocean of zero-point energy. It is a chaotic froth of probability, where the laws of cause and effect are constantly being mocked and rewritten at the speed of light. We have measured this phenomenon. It is not a hypothesis. In the laboratory, if you place two uncharged, perfectly smooth metal plates incredibly close to each other in a vacuum, closer than the width of a human hair, something impossible happens. The plates are pushed together. This is known as the Casimir effect. They are not being pulled by magnetism, and their mass is too small for gravity to have an effect. They are being pushed by the void itself. The gap between the plates is so extraordinarily narrow that it excludes the larger wavelengths of the virtual particles boiling in the vacuum. Because there are more virtual particles hammering against the outside of the plates than there are on the inside, the sheer, raw pressure of empty space crushes them together. The void has weight. The void has a physical force. The void is aggressive. This is the bleeding edge of human comprehension, And it is precisely where our two greatest scientific achievements declare war on each other. General relativity perfectly maps the smooth, elegant curvature of gravity on a massive cosmic scale. Quantum field theory perfectly maps the chaotic, boiling violence of the microscopic vacuum. Both theories have been rigorously tested to decimal places that boggle the mind. Both theories are undeniably, demonstrably true, but they are fundamentally, violently incompatible. If you try to calculate the gravitational weight of the quantum vacuum, if you ask the elegant math of Einstein to weigh the boiling sea of quantum mechanics, the equations self-destruct. The answer the mathematics spits out is a number so absurdly, impossibly large that it implies a single cup of empty space should contain enough energy to boil all the oceans of the Earth in a fraction of a millisecond. According to the combined math, the universe should have instantly crushed itself into a microscopic singularity the very moment it was born. In physics, this agonizing paradox is called the vacuum catastrophe. It is a discrepancy of 120 orders of magnitude between theory and observation. It is a 1 with 120 zeros behind it. It is widely considered the most spectacular failure, the worst mathematical prediction in the entire history of science. For decades, physicists have swept this existential nightmare under the rug. We convinced ourselves that on a macroscopic scale, out in the cold, dead silence of the solar system, the quantum boiling somehow naturally cancels itself out. We assumed that the smooth, predictable geometry of gravity dominates the massive scales, and the violent chaos of the quantum world stays securely locked away in the microscopic dark. We drew a comfortable, arbitrary line between the two realms, choosing to believe the universe was segregated, logical, and polite. This was the deeply flawed paradigm that guided the Artemis II mission. As the Orion spacecraft fired its translunar injection burn, it was leaving behind the chaotic electromagnetic noise of Earth. It was embarking on a purely ballistic trajectory into the most intensely studied gravitational environment in human history. The Earth-Moon system is a predictable clockwork mechanism. We have bounced lasers off the retro-reflectors left behind by the Apollo astronauts to measure the distance to the Moon down to the millimeter. We know the exact mass concentrations, the mascons, buried beneath the lunar crust. We know exactly, to a terrifying degree of precision, how the fabric of space-time curves in the absolute darkness behind the Moon. Orion's mission profile required it to fly blindly into that darkness. It was executing a free return trajectory, an elegant, fuel-efficient slingshot maneuver that relied entirely on the passive geometry of gravity. As the spacecraft crossed the lunar terminator, leaving the blinding, harsh glare of the sun and plunging into the inky shadow of the far side, it entered a zone of absolute sensory deprivation. This is the quietest, most desolate place within 1,000,000 miles of Earth. Shielded by 2,000 miles of solid lunar basalt, Orion was instantly cut off from all radio frequencies, all solar radiation, and all contact with the home world. For 45 grueling minutes, the 4 astronauts aboard were completely isolated, floating in a pressurized titanium shell, coasting silently along the invisible mathematical groove of curved space-time. The onboard flight computers and deep space sensors were not looking for anything new. The myriad of particle detectors, magnetometers, and highly sensitive gravitational wave interferometers were simply running a routine, automated diagnostic of the local vacuum. They were supposed to record the smooth, predictable geometry of Einstein's reality. They were supposed to confirm what our intuition and our physics textbooks already told us, that the dark side of the Moon was a stable, empty, and mathematically sound region of space. But as the telemetry would later reveal in cold, undeniable numbers, the environment waiting for them in the lunar shadow did not obey the mathematics of general relativity. It did not obey the mechanics of a stable vacuum. As the spacecraft reached the perilune, the absolute lowest point of its orbit, just miles above the desolate gray craters, the instruments began to log a severe, impossible disruption. The background sea of zero-point energy, the supposedly invisible, self-canceling boiling of the quantum vacuum, was not canceling itself out. It was aligning. The highly calibrated sensors detected a sudden, massive drop in the local gravitational constant. It was as if the smooth, curved slope of space-time that Orion was riding had suddenly hit a jagged, impossible fault line. The geometry of the void was tearing itself apart, creating a microscopic, localized inversion of gravity that, according to our math, should require the energy output of a dying star to sustain. Yet, it was happening right there, in the cold, silent vacuum just 60 miles above the lunar surface. The encrypted data spooling silently into the solid-state drives was describing a structural failure in the fabric of reality itself. A failure that was highly localized, geometrically perfect, and completely invisible to the human eye. The astronauts inside the capsule felt absolutely nothing. They were in constant freefall, entirely blind to the mathematical violence erupting immediately outside their hull. But the unblinking machines saw it, and the machines recorded an architecture hiding in the dark that was slowly beginning to... The telemetry recorded an architecture hiding in the dark that was slowly beginning to manifest. It began not as a visual apparition, but as a subtle mathematical infection in the capsule's inertial measurement units. To comprehend the sheer impossibility of what the flight computers were logging, we must look at how humanity mapped the moon before Orion arrived. Over a decade ago, NASA launched the Grail mission. Two washing machine-sized spacecraft, named Ebb and Flow, chased each other around the moon in a meticulously choreographed orbit. They did not take photographs. They did not scan for water. They did one thing, and they did it with ruthless precision. They measured the microscopic changes in the distance between themselves as they flew over the lunar surface. As the leading spacecraft flew over a dense underground mountain, a mascon, the slight increase in gravity would pull it forward, increasing the gap between it and the trailing craft by a fraction of a millimeter. By mapping these microscopic accelerations and decelerations, scientists built a high-resolution, three-dimensional map of the moon's gravitational field. It was a masterpiece of orbital mechanics. It proved that the moon's gravity is uneven, lumpy, and entirely dictated by the distribution of cold, dead mass beneath its crust. The map was static. It was a fossil record of ancient impacts and solidified magma oceans. Gravity, as dictated by the laws of physics, does not change unless mass moves. And on the desolate far side of the moon, there is no mass moving. It is a geological graveyard. Yet as Orion coasted at an altitude of 60 nautical miles above the Mare Ingenii, the Sea of Cleverness, its ultra-precise star trackers and laser gyroscopes recorded a lateral drift. It was microscopic at first, a deviation of a few millimeters per second squared. Under normal circumstances, mission control would attribute this to solar radiation pressure or the outgassing of a thruster. But Orion was in the deepest shadow of the moon, completely shielded from the sun, and its propulsion systems were dormant, locked in the cold sleep of a free return trajectory. The drift was not external, it was foundational. The spacecraft was responding to a gravitational gradient that did not exist on the Grail maps. It was as if a massive invisible mountain had suddenly materialized in the vacuum directly in Orion's flight path, and the capsule was beginning to roll down its mathematical slope. But this gradient was inverted. The telemetry indicated that the local gravitational field was not pulling the spacecraft. It was repelling it. This is where the cold equations of astrophysics begin to bleed into the realm of existential terror. Gravity, by every known law of physics, is exclusively an attractive force. Mass tells space-time how to curve, and that curvature always draws matter together. There is no such thing as anti-gravity in the standard model. To create a repulsive gravitational field, you would need exotic matter, a theoretical substance with negative mass, something that actively pushes space-time away from itself. Exotic matter violates the fundamental energy conditions of general relativity. It is a mathematical ghost, a parlor trick used by theoretical physicists to make the math of wormholes and warp drives balance on a chalkboard. It is not supposed to exist in nature, and it is certainly not supposed to be hovering 60 miles above the lunar surface. But the sensors did not care about our textbooks. The laser interferometers aboard Orion, designed to measure the microscopic flexing of the spacecraft's hull, began to capture a high-frequency vibration. It was not a mechanical rattle, It was a harmonic distortion in the localized fabric of space-time itself. When Orion finally cleared the limb of the Moon, slipping out of the radio blackout zone and back into the line of sight of Earth, it immediately dumped its telemetry buffers. Imagine the architecture of human communication spanning the solar system. The Deep Space Network is our ear to the cosmos, relying on massive 70-meter parabolic dish antennas located in Goldstone, California, Madrid, Spain, and Canberra, Australia. These antennas are marvels of engineering, equipped with receivers cooled by liquid helium to near absolute zero, designed to catch a whisper of a signal from billions of miles away. As Orion's encrypted S-band signal hit the dish in Canberra, it was instantly routed through sub-oceanic fiber optic cables, traveling at 2/3 the speed of light, directly into the server racks at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. The latency of this entire process, the time it takes for a photon to leave the Moon, hit the dish, convert into a digital packet, and render on a monitor, is roughly 1.3 seconds. For 3 seconds, the universe held a secret that humanity was fundamentally unprepared to receive. When the raw hexadecimal data was unpacked and translated into visual graphs by the automated telemetry algorithms, the flight dynamics officers did not see a spacecraft executing a flawless orbit. They saw a machine that had briefly passed through a physical paradox. Let us translate the cold data strings into a visual reality. Imagine driving down an infinitely long, perfectly flat highway in the dead of night. Your headlights cut through the absolute darkness, illuminating exactly 200 feet of asphalt ahead of you. The road is predictable. The physics of the tires against the pavement are constant. You know that if you hold the steering wheel straight, you will continue moving forward in a straight line. Now imagine that without warning, your headlights reveal a section of the highway that is not simply curved, but geometrically impossible. The asphalt twists into an M.C. Escher staircase, folding in on itself, defying the Cartesian grid of reality. Your car does not crash. It simply follows the new insane geometry of the road, drifting laterally and accelerating without any input from the engine. This is exactly what the flight computers recorded. The space-time vacuum above the far side of the Moon was not flat. It was highly structured. The repulsive gravitational gradient was not a chaotic anomaly. It was organized. The data revealed a geometric lattice of negative pressure, suspended in the vacuum, perfectly aligned and incredibly dense. The precision of this structure is what chilled the analysts to the bone. In chaotic systems, like the violent birth of a star or the collision of tectonic plates, nature produces jagged, fractal patterns. There is a beautiful, messy randomness to natural physics. But the anomaly recorded by Orion was unnervingly symmetrical. The gradient drop followed a perfect sinusoidal curve, a mathematical purity that is almost never observed in the wild. It was as if someone, or something, had placed a microscopic, mathematically perfect grid of exotic energy into the vacuum. The sheer scale of this phenomenon was equally terrifying. The sensors indicated that this localized pocket of repulsive gravity was exactly 2.4 kilometers wide, a perfect sphere of inverted physics floating silently in the dark. To generate a gravitational distortion of this magnitude, our current physics dictates you would need the mass of a small moon, condensed and inverted. Yet, there was nothing there. The optical sensors recorded nothing but the hard vacuum of space and the distant cold light of background stars. The structure was entirely invisible to the electromagnetic spectrum. It emitted no heat, no radio waves, no X-rays. It was purely a gravitational footprint, a shadow cast by an object that simply did not exist in our dimension of reality. To grasp the horror of this, we must return to the war between general relativity and quantum mechanics. Remember the Casimir effect, the microscopic pushing of metal plates by the boiling ocean of virtual particles in the quantum vacuum. We have always assumed that this violent, seething energy of the void is confined to the subatomic realm, locked away in dimensions smaller than a proton. It is a foundational pillar of modern science that the macro-universe, the universe of moons and planets, is immune to these quantum storms. But the telemetry from Orion suggested the exact opposite. It suggested that the microscopic chaos of the quantum vacuum was somehow leaking upward into the macroscopic world. The perfect sphere of repulsive gravity was not an object. It was a wound. It was a region where the underlying fabric of zero-point energy was bleeding through, organizing itself, and actively pushing back against the mass of the spacecraft. The analysts dug deeper into the interferometry data, looking for the source of the harmonic vibration. What they found shattered the final illusion of safety. The vibration was not static. It was changing in real time, responding dynamically to the presence of the Orion capsule. As the spacecraft approached the anomaly, the frequency of the gravitational distortion increased, shifting its resonance to match the exact mass and velocity of the incoming titanium hull. The vacuum was not just reacting, it was calculating. Think of the latency in a global computer network. When you ping a server halfway across the world, you expect a delay, a few milliseconds of silence as the electrons travel through the physical infrastructure of the internet. The vacuum anomaly exhibited a response latency of absolute zero. It adjusted its gravitational repulsion instantaneously, defying the speed of light, implying a state of quantum entanglement on a scale that defies sanity. The void was aware of the spacecraft. It was measuring it. It was actively maintaining the exact mathematical parameters necessary to gently but firmly push the physical mass of humanity's finest engineering away from its core. We must dwell on the sheer volume of this data to understand why it cannot be dismissed as a glitch. Modern spacecraft do not rely on single sensors. Orion carries triple redundant avionics systems. It has multiple inertial measurement units, star trackers from different manufacturers, and independent radar arrays. Every single one of these distinct, physically separated systems recorded the exact same impossible geometry at the exact same moment. The probability of a simultaneous identical hardware failure across all redundant systems is statistically indistinguishable from zero. It is far more likely that the laws of physics simply stopped applying for 45 minutes, and the data was deep. It wasn't just a spike on a graph. It was thousands of megabytes of raw, high-resolution telemetry, mapping the internal structure of this invisible anomaly. The data painted a picture of nested spheres of energy, Russian dolls of inverted gravity, cascading down into a central point of infinite density, a mathematical singularity that possessed no mass, yet commanded the curvature of space-time around it. How did we miss this? Humanity has pointed the most powerful telescopes ever conceived at the heavens. The Hubble Space Telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, massive arrays of radio dishes scanning the cosmos. We have mapped the cosmic microwave background, the residual heat of the Big Bang itself. How could a 2.4-kilometer sphere of impossible physics be sitting in our own backyard right behind our moon, completely undetected? The answer is terrifying in its simplicity. We only see what we know how to look for. Our entire civilization's astronomy is based on the electromagnetic spectrum. We look for light, heat, radiation. We are like fishermen casting nets designed only to catch red fish, completely oblivious to the leviathans swimming silently through the dark waters simply because they are blue. The anomaly emitted nothing in the electromagnetic spectrum. It was perfectly dark. We missed it because we are blind to the fundamental architecture of the void. We only perceived it now because we physically threw a piece of metal at it and measured how the metal bounced back. This revelation brings a creeping, cold dread to the highest echelons of theoretical physics. If the vacuum of space is not empty, but filled with highly structured, invisible anomalies capable of manipulating gravity on a macroscopic scale, then the universe is an entirely different machine than we thought. The silent, empty theater is not a stage. It is an active mechanism, and we do not know what the mechanism is designed to do. The anomaly did not destroy Orion. It merely diverted it, like a boulder gently guiding a stream of water. But the sheer power required to perform that gentle diversion is incomprehensible. If the energy bound within that 2.4-kilometer sphere were to become unstable, if the quantum vacuum were to suddenly stop being polite and violently snap back to a baseline state, the resulting release of zero-point energy would outshine the sun. It would strip the atmosphere from the Earth and boil the oceans in an instant. The fact that it remains stable, sitting silently in the lunar shadow, implies a level of control or equilibrium that we cannot even begin to model mathematically. The analysts in Houston spent weeks running the telemetry through the most advanced supercomputers on the planet. They fed the data into models running the equations of string theory, loop quantum gravity, and every exotic theoretical framework designed to bridge the gap between Einstein and the quantum world. Every single simulation ended the exact same way, a fatal computation error. The machines simply could not reconcile the presence of macroscopic zero-point energy structures with the existence of a stable universe. The mathematics demanded that this anomaly should either instantly evaporate into a flash of Hawking radiation or collapse into a supermassive black hole. It should not be able to just exist. It was a sustained paradox, a living contradiction floating 60 miles above the gray dust of the lunar surface. The structure was a physical insult to the entire history of human science. And as the physicists stared at the glowing monitors, watching the simulation models crash over and over again, they realized that they had hit a fundamental limit. They had reached the absolute edge of human understanding. The math was breaking down, and to understand the profound terror of that statement, you must understand what mathematics actually represents to a theoretical physicist. Mathematics is not just a language we invented to describe the world. It is the underlying source code of reality. When an engineer builds a bridge, they trust that the stress equations will hold because gravity and steel obey a strict, unyielding logic. When an astronomer calculates the trajectory of a comet, they are tracking the celestial gears of a machine that has run flawlessly for billions of years. For the last century, humanity has operated under the absolute conviction that if you have the right equation, the universe will eventually reveal all its secrets. The cosmos might be vast, it might be violent, but we believed it was fundamentally rational. The anomaly discovered by the Artemis II mission destroyed that belief. It did not just present a puzzle that we lacked the pieces to solve. It took the board, the pieces, and the very concept of the game and crushed them into dust. When the supercomputers at the Johnson Space Center tried to model the 2.4-kilometer sphere of inverted gravity, they did not simply get a wrong answer. They got an impossible one. The algorithms crashed because they encountered mathematical singularities. A singularity is the point where an equation divides by zero. It is the moment the math gives up, throwing its hands in the air and returning a value of infinity. In physics, infinity is not a number. It is a blinking red warning light that tells you your theory has catastrophically failed. It means you have crossed a boundary into a realm where your rules no longer apply. Historically, physicists despise infinities. For decades, whenever an infinity popped up in the equations of quantum mechanics, scientists used a brilliant but highly controversial mathematical trick called renormalization to get rid of it. Imagine you are the chief accountant for a massive global corporation. Every time you calculate the daily expenses, your spreadsheet software glitches and tells you the company spent an infinite amount of money. If you report this, the company collapses. So, you find a clever mathematical loophole. You realize that if you subtract another perfectly calculated infinity from your expense report, the two impossible numbers cancel each other out, leaving you with a neat, highly accurate, and completely manageable finite number. The ledger balances. The trains run on time, the cell phones work. But deep down in the cold hours of the night, you know the ledger is fundamentally a lie. You are hiding the monster behind a curtain of clever algebra. Renormalization allowed us to build the modern world. It is the reason we have microchips, lasers, and magnetic resonance imaging. It allowed us to tame the boiling ocean of the quantum vacuum, mathematically sweeping the infinite energies under the rug so we could calculate the behavior of atoms with breathtaking precision. But the anomaly hovering in the lunar shadow refused to be renormalized. When the analysts tried to apply the standard mathematical tricks to the Artemis telemetry, the equations did not balance. The infinites compounded. The monster tore down the curtain. The sheer, localized density of zero-point energy required to push the Orion spacecraft away was so massive that it broke the algebraic scaffolding of our best theories. To grasp the magnitude of this barrier, we must look at the most embarrassing failure in the history of theoretical physics, a failure that the Artemis data violently dragged into the light. It is known as the cosmological constant problem. In 1915, when Albert Einstein finalized his equations for general relativity, he realized they predicted a universe that was either expanding or collapsing, but never standing still. Because the prevailing wisdom of the time dictated that the universe was static and eternal, Einstein artificially added a mathematical term to his equations. He called it the cosmological constant. It was an invisible, repulsive energy designed to perfectly counteract the inward pull of gravity, keeping the universe locked in a stable freeze. Years later, when Edwin Hubble peered through his telescope and proved that the universe was actually expanding, Einstein famously called the cosmological constant his greatest blunder. He stripped it from his equations, and physics moved on. But the ghost of Einstein's blunder refused to die. In the late 1990s, astronomers measuring the light from distant supernovas made a horrifying discovery. The expansion of the universe was not slowing down, as gravity dictated it should. It was accelerating. The galaxies were flying apart faster and faster, driven by a relentless, invisible force that permeated the entire cosmos. Physicists resurrected Einstein's cosmological constant and gave it a new, terrifying name: dark energy. Dark energy is the repulsive weight of the vacuum itself. It is the macro-scale manifestation of the quantum boiling we discussed earlier. It makes up nearly 70% of the total energy in the universe, a vast, invisible ocean that is actively ripping the fabric of reality apart. Here is where the barrier becomes insurmountable. When physicists attempt to calculate the density of this dark energy using the flawless, battle-tested laws of quantum mechanics, the answer they get is catastrophically wrong. The math predicts that the repulsive energy of the vacuum should be 120 orders of magnitude, stronger than what astronomers actually observe in the deep cosmos, a 1 followed by 120 zeros. If the math of quantum mechanics were correct, the repulsive force of the vacuum would be so violent that atoms could never form. The Earth, the Sun, and your very body would have been ripped apart into subatomic static in the first microsecond of the universe's existence. And yet, here we are. The universe is relatively calm. The dark energy is incredibly weak, just barely strong enough to slowly push the galaxies apart over billions of years. This colossal discrepancy is the great paradox of modern science. It is an open, bleeding wound in our understanding of reality, proving that we are missing a massive, foundational piece of the cosmic puzzle. For 20 years, we believed that dark energy was a smooth, uniform property of empty space, an incredibly weak background hum spread evenly across the billions of light-years of the cosmos. We believed it could never be concentrated. We believed it could never be weaponized by nature on a local scale. The Artemis telemetry destroyed that assumption. The 2.4-kilometer sphere above the lunar surface was not composed of exotic matter or alien machinery. The data signatures perfectly matched the theoretical profile of pure dark energy. But it was not a weak background hum. It was concentrated, hyper-dense, and highly localized. It was as if someone had taken the diffuse, repulsive energy of an entire galaxy and compressed it into a sphere the size of a small town. This is the equivalent of finding a snowflake resting comfortably inside a blast furnace. It violates thermodynamics, it violates entropy, it violates the fundamental geometry of space-time. According to every law of physics, a concentration of dark energy that dense should immediately explode outward at the speed of light, tearing a hole in the universe. Instead, it was stable. It was vibrating harmonically. It was waiting in the dark. This stability is what drove the analysts in Houston to the edge of despair. If a phenomenon defies the standard model of particle physics, you turn to the fringe. You turn to the desperate, beautiful mathematics of string theory. String theory is the ultimate, highly speculative attempt to unite the smooth curves of gravity with the violent chaos of the quantum world. It proposes that the fundamental ingredients of reality are not point-like particles, but incredibly tiny, vibrating strings of energy. But the math of string theory only works if the universe has extra dimensions. It requires 10 or even 11 dimensions to function. Because we only perceive 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, string theorists argue that the remaining 6 or 7 dimensions are curled up, compressed into microscopic, incomprehensible geometries known as Calabi-Yau manifolds. These extra dimensions are supposed to be so incredibly small that they are utterly invisible to us, existing on a scale far below the size of an electron. Imagine a long green garden hose stretched across a lawn. From 100 yards away, the hose looks like a one-dimensional line. It only has length, but if you walk up to it and look closely, you realize it is a three-dimensional cylinder. An ant can walk forward and backward along its length, but it can also walk in a circle around its circumference. From a distance, that circular dimension is invisible, curled up and hidden. String theory argues that the fabric of our universe is exactly like that hose, woven with hidden microscopic dimensions, where the true mechanics of gravity and quantum energy are managed out of sight. In a state of pure academic panic, theoretical physicists applied the mathematics of string theory to the Artemis telemetry. They hypothesized that the localized sphere of dark energy might be a puncture, a localized unwinding of those hidden dimensions. If a Calabi-Yau manifold were to somehow uncurl to expand from a subatomic scale into the macroscopic world, it could theoretically trap a massive concentration of zero-point energy, creating a localized pocket of inverted physics. It was a desperate theory, a mathematical Hail Mary designed to bring order back to the universe, but the data refused to yield. The harmonic vibrations recorded by Orion's interferometers did not match the predicted frequencies of uncurled dimensions. The math was too fragile, too elegant for the brutal reality of the telemetry. The structure in the lunar shadow was not a natural, dimensional anomaly. It was too perfect. The sinusoidal curve of its gravitational gradient, the instant response latency, the geometric lattice of its internal pressures, all of it pointed to a level of structural engineering that defies the word natural. The barrier we hit was not just a failure of our equations. It was the chilling realization that our equations might be irrelevant. We were trying to use the physics of a puddle to understand the architecture of an ocean liner. The profound danger of this barrier is not just philosophical, it is existential. If our understanding of the vacuum is this fundamentally flawed, then the very ground beneath our feet is a mathematical illusion. This brings us to the most terrifying concept in theoretical physics, a concept that the Artemis anomaly dragged from the realm of chalkboard speculation into the realm of immediate localized threat. It is called vacuum decay. To understand vacuum decay, you must understand the concept of energy states. In nature, everything wants to reach its lowest possible energy state. A boulder balanced precariously on the side of a mountain has high potential energy. It is unstable. If a gust of wind nudges it, it will roll down the mountain until it reaches the valley floor, arriving at its lowest energy state, a position of true stability. Physicists call this the true vacuum. For a century, we assumed that the universe we live in is resting at the bottom of the valley. We assumed that the boiling ocean of quantum mechanics and the smooth fabric of space-time represent the lowest possible energy state of reality. But the equations of quantum field theory, particularly those involving the mass of the Higgs boson, suggest a horrific alternative. They suggest that our universe might not be at the bottom of the valley. We might just be resting in a shallow dimple on the side of the mountain. We might be existing in what physicists call a false vacuum. It looks stable. It feels stable. It has lasted for 13 billion years. But it is not the bottom. If the universe is in a false vacuum, it means that the fundamental fabric of reality is inherently fragile. If an event were to generate enough localized energy, it could nudge the universe out of the shallow dimple. It could cause a localized patch of space-time to drop down into the true vacuum, the actual bottom of the mountain. The physics inside that patch of true vacuum would be entirely different. The laws of chemistry, the strength of gravity, the mass of electrons, all of it would instantly rewrite itself. If a bubble of true vacuum were to form, it would not just sit there. The pressure difference between the true vacuum and our false vacuum would be infinite. The bubble would expand outward in all directions at exactly the speed of light. Because it moves at the speed of light, you would never see it coming. There would be no warning. One moment you would be standing on Earth looking at the stars, and the next millisecond, the fundamental forces holding your atoms together would cease to exist. The expanding bubble of true vacuum would systematically erase the universe, rewriting reality into a cold, unrecognizable void as it swept across the galaxies. This is the terror that gripped the flight dynamics officers in Houston. The 4-kilometer sphere of concentrated, repulsive dark energy hovering behind the moon possessed the exact mathematical signature of a vacuum nucleation event. It looked exactly like a localized puncture in the false vacuum. The anomaly was a region of space where the baseline rules of the universe had already been rewritten. It was a localized pocket of true physics, held in an impossible state of equilibrium by a mechanism we cannot comprehend. Why hasn't it expanded? Why hasn't it initiated the catastrophic vacuum decay that our mathematics demands? The equations offer no comfort, only a terrifying silence. The existence of the barrier implies that something is actively holding the anomaly in check. The geometric lattice of negative pressure recorded by the Orion capsule might not be the phenomenon itself, but the cage containing it. The harmonic vibrations, the instant response latency, the precise adjustment to Orion's mass. These are not the behaviors of a natural cosmic disaster. They are the behaviors of a localized containment field. We have spent our entire history believing that the universe is a blind, indifferent mechanism. We believed that the dangers of the cosmos were mindless. Asteroids, solar flares, collapsing stars. But the mathematical barrier we hit in the Artemis telemetry suggests something far worse. It suggests that the vacuum of space is not an empty stage, but a highly pressurized environment, and someone or something has placed a microscopic, mathematically perfect valve right in our backyard. The failure of our physics is not a sign that we need to study harder. It is a sign that we are looking at an architecture designed by an intelligence that operates on a scale of reality we are biologically incapable of visualizing. The equations are not broken. They are just the wrong language. The silence from the agencies involved in the Artemis II data analysis is not born of a desire to hide a simple discovery. It is born of a profound, paralyzing inability to explain what the discovery actually implies. When the math breaks down so completely, when the bedrock of human logic fractures, you are left with nothing but the raw, unfiltered dread of the unknown. The analysts stared at the monitors, watching the simulation models fail again and again, realizing that humanity had unknowingly sailed its tiny, fragile ships right up to the edge of a cosmic abyss. We threw a stone into the dark, and the dark caught it, analyzed it, and gently pushed it away. The barrier is not just mathematical, it is a physical warning. And as we process the horrifying implications of that warning, we are forced to look at the night sky, not as a canvas of stars, but as a vast, silent machine whose true purpose is something we are utterly terrified to define. Because if that 2.4-kilometer sphere of inverted physics is a localized containment field, if it is a mathematical valve holding back the catastrophic collapse of the false vacuum, then we are forced to completely redefine the nature of the cosmos. We are no longer living in a natural universe. We are living inside an infrastructure. For generations, we have stared into the deep field images captured by our telescopes, marveling at the swirling galaxies and the massive clouds of stellar nursery gas. We viewed the cosmos as a vast, untamed wilderness, a chaotic but beautiful accident of thermodynamics. But the Artemis telemetry suggests that the wilderness is an illusion. The visible universe, the stars, the planets, the dust, and the light, makes up less than 5% of the total mass energy of reality. The other 95% is the dark sector, dark matter and dark energy. We have always treated this dark sector as a passive, invisible ocean upon which our tiny islands of visible matter float. We assumed it was an inert, lifeless byproduct of the Big Bang. The anomaly behind the moon proves the dark sector is not an empty ocean. It is an industrial medium. We are the anomaly. The matter that makes up your body, the Earth and the Sun, is a microscopic rounding error in the cosmic ledger. If the universe is a massive, planetary-scale computer, baryonic matter, the stuff we can see and touch, is just the dust settling on the outer casing. The actual processing, the true mechanics of reality, are taking place entirely in the dark sector. If you can manipulate the quantum vacuum, If you can compress dark energy into geometric lattices and establish localized areas of true vacuum, you are no longer bound by the petty constraints of chemistry and biology. You do not need to mine asteroids for iron. You do not need to harvest the weak scattered radiation of a dying star to power your civilization. You plug directly into the baseline source code of space-time itself. This brutally and efficiently solves the greatest lingering mystery of our species, the Fermi paradox. The suffocating silence of the universe, the absolute lack of any radio signals or Dyson spheres from advanced alien civilizations, has haunted our astronomers for a century. We assumed that because we use radio waves, they must use radio waves. We assumed that because we build with metal, they must build with metal. We were listening for the faint, primitive beating of drums across an ocean, completely oblivious to the fact that the ocean itself was a fiber optic network of gravitational engineering. They are not hiding from us. They simply exist on a substrate of reality that we are biologically incapable of perceiving. They do not build their cities on the fragile, temporary crusts of rocky planets orbiting unstable fusion reactors. They build their architectures in the cold, stable mathematics of the vacuum. The implications of this kind of engineering stretch far beyond simply moving mass or communicating across the void. They fundamentally rewrite the trajectory of time itself. In our current understanding of physics, the universe is governed by the iron law of entropy. Everything decays. Stars burn through their hydrogen, galaxies drift apart, and the relentless accelerating pressure of dark energy expands the cosmos until it eventually freezes into an infinitely dark, sparse expanse. Physicists call this the Big Freeze, or if the acceleration continues unchecked, the Big Rip, a scenario where the repulsive force of the vacuum becomes so violent that it shreds galaxies, planetary systems, and eventually the very atoms of matter into subatomic static. It is the inescapable final destination of all things. But the structure recorded by the Orion flight computers defies entropy. By concentrating dark energy, by perfectly balancing the repulsive forces of the vacuum, the architects of that anomaly have created a localized zone where the thermodynamic arrow of time can be manipulated. The 2.4-kilometer sphere is not just a spatial anomaly, it is a temporal anchor. If you were to pass through the outer layers of that negative gravitational gradient, the relativistic effects would be staggering. The intense curvature of the localized space-time would cause the flow of time relative to the outside universe to grind to a near halt. You could spend what feels like a week inside that sphere, and when you emerged, the Earth could have aged 1,000,000 years, or the Sun could have burned itself down to a dead white dwarf. It is a lifeboat designed to ride out the slow death of the cosmos, or perhaps a bunker designed to survive the catastrophic unwinding of the false vacuum. This level of mastery over the foundational forces of reality casts a horrifying shadow over the entire history of human achievement. We split the atom, and we thought we had touched the face of God. We sent a handful of fragile, slow-moving probes out of our solar system, and we declared ourselves an interstellar species. But in the face of an intelligence that can engineer the quantum vacuum, our entire civilization is reduced to the metabolic flailing of bacteria on a glass slide. We are like an isolated cargo cult on a remote Pacific island. We watch the massive silver airplanes fly high overhead, dropping cargo that we do not understand. We build runway replicas out of straw and wood, performing mathematical rituals with our primitive equations, hoping to summon the gods of the sky. But our physics is just straw. We have no concept of the global supply chain, the aerodynamics, or the true purpose of the machines passing silently above us. Our wars, our philosophies, our grand geopolitical struggles, they are microscopic events happening on a thin layer of wet rock, completely unnoticed by the mechanics operating the machinery of the void. There is a specific kind of terror that comes not from being hunted, but from being entirely irrelevant. A predator can be fought. A predator acknowledges your existence, even if only as prey. But the architecture hiding behind the moon does not care that we exist. When you pave a highway, you do not pause to consider the opinions of the ant colony you are burying under the asphalt. You do not hate the ants. They are simply not a variable in your engineering calculations, Humanity has spent its entire existence desperate for cosmic company, terrified of being alone in the dark. The Artemis data reveals that we are not alone. But the presence in the dark is so unfathomably vast, so deeply integrated into the invisible fabric of the universe, that we cannot even be classified as insects to it. We must now confront the terrifying reality of our long-term future under this new paradigm. We are trapped in a solar system that is heavily monitored, or perhaps routinely utilized, by forces that treat the laws of physics as pliable suggestions. Every time we look up at the night sky, we are no longer looking at a pristine frontier. We are looking at a heavily trafficked superhighway, and we are standing barefoot in the median. The mathematical boundary we hit when trying to simulate the lunar anomaly is not just a gap in our knowledge, it is a quarantine zone. The universe is divided into those who are subject to the laws of physics and those who write them. We are merely subjects, coasting blindly on the gravitational currents generated by the true masters of the void. And the most chilling aspect of the Artemis telemetry is not the existence of the sphere itself. It is the inescapable logic of its placement. A localized manipulation of dark energy, a valve in the vacuum, is not placed randomly. An infrastructure this complex is not built without a specific utilitarian purpose. A containment field is not activated unless there is something catastrophic to contain. The structure is sitting just 60 miles above the lunar surface, a celestial stone's throw from our fragile atmosphere. It is maintaining an impossibly delicate balance of quantum energy, constantly adjusting to the microscopic fluctuations of the local vacuum, instantly reacting to the mass of our passing spacecraft, which means it is actively working. The machinery is running. As the physicists in Houston stared at the harmonic resonance data, watching the invisible sphere calculate and repel the physical weight of the Orion capsule, the true horror of the situation settled over the control room. They realized they were not just looking at a dormant piece of alien infrastructure. They were looking at a mechanism that was silently, perfectly executing a sequence of operations that we cannot decipher, managing a cosmic pressure we cannot measure. It is a gear in a clockwork that spans the dark sector of the universe, slowly ticking away, leading to an inevitable thermodynamic outcome that we are fundamentally powerless to stop or even fully comprehend. We have spent centuries building monolithic telescopes and pointing them at the sky, assuming we were the privileged audience in a grand cosmic theater. We mapped the constellations, named the lifeless planets after our dead gods, and charted the slow birth and violent death of galaxies billions of light years away. We believed that by observing the universe, by writing down its rules on chalkboards and inside supercomputers, we were somehow taming it. We convinced ourselves that the dark was nothing more than the absence of light. The Artemis telemetry has violently stripped away that comforting arrogance. The dark is not empty. The dark is occupied, and it is incredibly busy. Think of the sheer, staggering insignificance this imposes upon the entirety of human history. Every empire that has ever risen and fallen, every brutal war fought over a microscopic fraction of a pale blue dot, every grand scientific breakthrough, every profound philosophical revelation, all of it has taken place on a fragile speck of dust, floating blindly inside a machine whose scale and purpose we cannot even begin to calculate. We are not the pinnacle of biological evolution. We are not the conscious universe experiencing itself, as the poets like to claim. We are a chemical byproduct. We are living in the exhaust fumes of an engine that operates entirely in the shadows of the quantum vacuum. That 2.4-kilometer sphere of inverted gravity, sitting in the absolute silence of the lunar shadow, is a cold monument to our complete irrelevance. It does not communicate, it does not threaten, it does not demand worship. It simply functions. It maintains the delicate mathematical barrier between the false vacuum that allows our biology to exist and the true vacuum that would erase us from reality at the speed of light. Or perhaps, worse yet, it is patiently waiting for a sequence of cosmic variables we cannot predict to finally turn the valve. Humanity must now wake up to a profoundly altered reality. The sky above us is no longer an infinite canvas of exploration. It is a ceiling. We are trapped in a localized quarantine zone, monitored by an infrastructure so deeply woven into the microscopic fabric of space-time that we can no longer distinguish the architect from the architecture. We are sharing our own solar system with a mechanism of absolute, incomprehensible power, and we have absolutely no idea who turned it on. There is no comfort to be found in our equations. The elegant mathematics of string theory, the chaotic boiling of zero-point energy, the relentless, repulsive force of dark energy, they do not offer us salvation. They only describe the invisible bars of the cage. We have spent our entire existence yelling into the dark, begging for a sign that we are not alone. We broadcast our music, our binary codes, and our desperate greetings into the interstellar void, desperately hoping that someone, somewhere, was listening. Someone was listening. They just never cared enough to reply. They simply placed a maintenance hatch in our backyard, adjusted the local gravitational constant to suit their needs, and went back to their work. The next time you walk outside at night, look up past the atmosphere, look past the craters of the moon, look deep into the black, empty spaces between the stars. The universe is not a silent, untouched expanse waiting for us to conquer it. It is a functioning, highly pressurized machine. And right now, in the cold, dead vacuum just 60 miles above the lunar surface, a gear is turning in the dark.